How many of us have ever wondered at some point in our lives, what is really the point of Jesus? And in church we often talk about when Jesus died, that Jesus had the power to rise again, but actually Jesus lived a life as well. And I sort of feel sometimes Jesus a bit like, I did live as well, like I did do other stuff. But we often focus on Jesus' death and Jesus' resurrection, but Jesus lived life and Jesus told stories to be able to show us and tell us what God is like. And it's almost like us meeting him face to face in the flesh and him saying, I don't know what you've heard about me, I don't know what's been written, I don't know what's been said, but I'm coming to show you really who I am, what I'm about, what I love, and what you mean to me. And so Jesus lives this life and he tells many, many stories, because stories often really help with understanding who people are and what they're about. And this passage that we've got tonight is one of my favourite passages ever, because it reminds us and it gives us a little window or a little insight into what does God think, or what does God do when we mess up? What does God do when we think that we've failed? What does God do when we feel like a disappointment? What does God do when we feel far from the people we really want to be? And this is where we find out what God does. And so there is a father who represents God, and there's two sons who represent us. And the first son goes to his father and he says, give me all that you've got, I want all my inheritance, give it me now, I want to live life to the full, I want to take what is mine and I want to go and live it up. And the father just gives it to him, no question, no conditions, and the son goes and he lives it up, and it's quite good, it's quite popular, gets to do lots of like pretty cool things and stuff. But then after a while, the son soon finds emptiness. He soon finds that the highs don't really last, the fake friends haven't really lasted, that the happiness hasn't really lasted, and he ends up in a pigsty feeding pigs, thinking, even if I came crawling back to my dad at home, even if I came home begging, even if I lived the lowest life back home, there would be more life there than anything I found out here. And so he travels back and he finds his father, and the father has been waiting night and day. The father has been watching night and day. The father has been loving night and day and hoping night and day that his son will return. Now in those days, in that culture, like no one ran anywhere, which to me sounds like my kind of culture, apart from everything else about it. But the idea of a father running at that time was about as common as the Queen like running after her corgis around the park. Like it was really not expected. It was really uncommon. It was really not the thing to do. And yet the father in this story doesn't really care. He doesn't really care if it affects what people or the neighbours think because they're little twitching curtains. He doesn't care what other people think of him, but he just sees his child and runs and runs and runs and hugs him. And he says, let's throw a party. This is a time to celebrate. At what point in all of that does the father say, I told you so. I knew you'd do this. You're always a disappointment. Why can't you be more like your sister, your brother, your friend that's also good and gets all the good grades? Why can't you go and be like them? He just doesn't. He doesn't say anything like that at all. He says, I'm just so glad that you're here. And that's what God says to us tonight. I'm just so glad that you're here. Whatever's gone before in this week, in this day, in this month, in this start of term, God just says to us, I'm just so glad that you're here right now. The only judgmental words that we hear are from the other son, which is another representation of us. The other son, the brother who stays at home, is kind of saying, aren't you going to punish him? Doesn't he get grounded? Doesn't he need to earn his way back into the family? What are you going to make him do to make him grovel? Why does he get a party and I don't? And I'm sure there's plenty of siblings in the room that would understand that kind of feeling of this just isn't fair. And the father turns around and says, no, because that's not how we do things in this family. In this family, we celebrate and we love and we forgive. The first son thought that he'd have to earn back his father's love after running away and spending all that he thought the father could offer him. But what the father could give him couldn't be carried in his pockets. What the father could offer him could not be scooped up in his hands and taken away. What the father could offer him was endless and life-giving if he only stayed close to the source of it all. In 1 John 3 verse 1 it says, "Look how the Father has lavished his love on us, that we should be called children of God, for that is what we are." That's what matters, and that's what can't be lost. So that was a parable, that was a story Jesus told, but Jesus lived out love and grace in endless supply in his life as well. And one of the places that we see this, and one of the greatest tragedies for me within the Easter story, is Judas. Because Judas was the friend of Jesus who would betray him to the point of death. But Judas never got to hear and see what all the other disciples got to hear and see when Jesus rose again. He never got to see that Jesus beat death. He never got to see that his actions could not stop the God of love and grace and power. He never got to hear, like all the other friends got to hear, who abandoned Jesus, who let him down, who slagged him off, who ran away when he really needed help. He never got to hear what they all got to hear. He never got to have that second chat with Jesus, often over a barbecue, which is, a great tragedy in itself. But he never got to hear that actually that love and that grace and forgiveness was for all of them. And we know this includes Judas, because at the Last Supper, Jesus knows exactly who will betray him. And yet he still washes Judas's feet, he still feeds him, he still invites him. And he still says to all of them that are present, "This is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you." And you can almost imagine Jesus like locking eyes with Judas and saying, "Even for you, Jesus, even for you, Judas, even for you." Judas walked away before he could know and experience that Jesus' love and grace was for him, as it is for all of us here tonight and beyond. And my encouragement to all of us here tonight is actually that we don't walk away thinking, "This can't be for me. This love and this grace stuff, this can't be for me. This doesn't include me." Because the way Jesus lived and the stories that he told and the relationships that he had all prove that this love and this grace and forgiveness is for anyone and everyone. And that's what we celebrate in baptism. We don't celebrate being perfect, because we never are going to be. We don't celebrate having all the answers to all of our questions, because we're never going to have all the answers to our questions. We don't celebrate or think about clocking up all the God brownie points that we can work out, because God's really not interested in what we can do for him, but more interested in knowing us. And so what we celebrate at baptism is the start of the journey that says, if this love and this grace and this forgiveness is really for me, I want it. My question to you tonight is, do you want that love and grace? Do you want to know that you're loved? Do you want to know that there's hope even when life is crazy and chaotic? Do you want to know that there's a place to go where we are seen and we are known and we are accepted? A place where life flourishes? Is that something that we want? So let's take a moment to close our eyes and to just have a little think about that. And if, as we close our eyes, if you're wondering if this really matters, if this really makes a difference, I just want you to picture in your minds what you think heaven is like. Imagine it. What's happening? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What's going on? And our story tells us that when one person chooses this love and this grace of forgiveness, heaven just stops. Heaven watches. Heaven throws a party. So maybe you want to know and accept and celebrate that today. And if you do, heaven stops for you. And maybe if you want to do that, you might want to just place your hand on your heart, because this is between you and God. And maybe just say, "I want to know that love and grace.